Hello and welcome to Leaders of Tomorrow, 18-hour special initiative that celebrates the undying entrepreneurial spirit of micro, small and medium enterprises. On the show, we are taking your emails, your calls and your social media queries, and to answer those, I have with me in the studios Vikram Gupta. He's the founder as well as managing partner of Ivy Cap. I also have Hemendra Hazari, independent banking expert. Thank you both gentlemen very much for joining us here today. Our first query is a call coming in from Sajid Mirajkar. Go ahead, Sajid.
I have seen tremendous downfall in all profit margin of every company. Still the prices are going high. However, now the customers are more than before. I wanted to ask you that how and well will this aid? As for me, there will be shortest margin with high sale. That means we have to do more business to reach the same ratio of profit as we are earning before.
So it's a very business school kind of question in terms of how do you go about protecting your margins. So particularly for an MSME where raw material prices are going high, the business environment costs are so high, what would you recommend?
My suggestion typically to startups is that, you have to really focus. Of course, margins is revenues minus costs. So assuming that your revenues, you are actually focused on getting from the target markets, of course, you have to grow those as well. But the cost side is something which is more in your control. And when you look at the broader cost picture, you have the cost of material, which actually, of course, given the sourcing that you have, you can only do so much. And then the cost of manpower, right? So which is, I think, one of the biggest issues. So there are various ways to handle these things. Of course, cost of manpower can be handled by getting the right people in your organization who are willing to take lesser salaries, in lieu of better future value in the company. And then in terms of the overall gross margins, for example, you have to make sure that you have some minimum gross margins given the price of the raw materials you're sourcing. Otherwise, it becomes extremely challenging at the unit economics level, because if your unit economics is not working, it's very difficult to scale up the business. So you have to make your choices very early on in the business, whether you are in the right business to begin with.
I would just like to add that normally what happens to a lot of these SMEs is their products go to a large company, and the large company effectively controls everything there. I think the endeavor of any of these MSMEs is to constantly upgrade their product or their service, and that you can do with technology, or do something which is different and always try to keep that edge if you want to see your margins expand, because it's only with that you can charge a premium to your product. Now, if your product gets commoditized, then the margin expansion becomes very difficult.
All right, let's take our next query. This is an email from Ravi Birje. He says he runs a solar PV generation business in Pune. He wants to know the options available with regards to finance availability through various options, whether it is venture capital, banks, etc., which are available for his industry. Both of you gentlemen, in fact, can comment on this. Maybe I'll start with you as far as the venture capital goes.
Sure. Typically, of course, solar projects are one of the challenges that, again, long gestation projects. It becomes a little difficult from the perspective you're looking for a 5-year exit as a VC. But that said, I think there are quite a few innovative business models available there, where you look at, taking the capital cost out of the business model and maybe using a leasing structure, leasing model, where the business actually is using the assets maybe as a service, or maybe just using only those assets which are required for the business. So I think it's about how do you really restructure the use of assets for the business. If you use an innovative business model, I think there are ways to actually create models there. The other thing I would like to say is that also such businesses can get loans early on. So there are banks which are willing to finance. So if you use the right mix of debt and equity, that can enhance the return on equity. So I think it's the right mix which is required.
So the government, Hemendra, is of course encouraging the entire, solar generation business. As a part of that, what about the financing options to the industry?
See, from banks you can get a loan of up to, I think, 15 crores per unit. I would just like to be a little cautious of alternative energy here, because alternative energy, what we have found out, especially if you're competing with coal in India, without a subsidy from the government, it cannot be viable. And it is a long gestation period, and as you very rightly pointed out, the VCs have a limited time frame, and therefore from a private equity or a venture capital fund, it becomes rather high risk. So therefore, it is extremely important when any of these entrepreneurs enter, whether it's solar, alternative energy, or any entity, they should build their business model taking into fact that the subsidy will be the bonus. So now that the issue here is, in a lot of alternative energy, if you factor that out, it does not become a viable business model at all. And what we've seen even in India, in the case of Suzlon and even some of the very large turbine generators abroad, they have ended up with a lot of problems and losses.
All right, I hope that answers your query, Ravi. Let's take in the next query coming in from Mayank Mittal. He has called in with his query, in fact. Go ahead, Mayank.
We are into manufacture of disinfectants in the last 20 years. Living in this country, we are manufacturing into the scenario of multinational companies. We have limited budgets with us. We have limited scopes with us, and we have limited financial resources with us. And how can we cope up with these multinational companies in their marketing strategies where we do not have financial capabilities with us?
Okay, fair enough. If I understood that right, he's in the FMCG space, and he's saying specifically when his company and this industry competing with the larger players in the space.
So I think one of the biggest costs in this business is the marketing and the distribution costs. I think if you get online in this business, there is a big opportunity there. So the cost of marketing can come down substantially once you really start going through online business. But at the same time, I think if you're a small business, there are now opportunities available with Snapdeals and Flipkarts of the world where you can actually go and register yourself, where the costs come down further. So I think I would say that business like FMCG has opportunity like that, but at the same time I think your choice of products is also very important, because you need to be very careful about choosing the products which are high margin products. If you are choosing a commodity kind of a product, your margins are not very high, and becomes extremely challenging to really compete in that market.
What do you want to add to that?
So I think technology has made a very big difference, as he has pointed out, because today you have market platforms in the form of, say, Amazon or Flipkart, where if you have a decent product and you can offer it there, which was not the case earlier. So I think with the entry of technology, smaller players can have a better chance taking on the much larger MNCs in this field. And even the advertising, I think either you use these large market platforms which are online, which are available, or you use social media, you use various of these Facebook, all these type of accounts where you can advertise and even have a more local presence felt.
Let's take our next email coming in from Amir Lakhani. He says in the business of fire and security and wants to know how he should allocate funds percentage wise between different needs of his business. So, if you were to substitute fire and security with any other business for an MSME, a general thumb rule in terms of how much and you should be allocating funds to different needs, whether it's expansion, manpower, government regulations, etc.
So I think first of all, electronics as a space is becoming very hot. There is a recent government fund which has been launched called EDF, which is focused on electronic space. Secondly, this space is also getting very hot with respect to the new innovations which are happening in terms of the IoT, artificial intelligence, machine learning. So I broadly see a huge opportunity for electronic products business, right? Now the question is, if you're doing electronics business, how do you allocate your expenses and funds? Now the answer to that is it depends, right? So are you in the manufacturing business? And if assuming they're in the manufacturing business, then of course a lot of your allocation will actually go into manufacturing of these products, and then of course if these are consumer products, then of course there will be a lot of funding which will be required to be allocated for marketing. If it's a B2B on the other hand, so if you're like working with other businesses, then of course you need to also consider working capital as a huge requirement, because typically you have to factor in at least 60 to 90 days of receivable cycle as well. So I think it will depend on various factors depending on what specific business you are in. And if you're only in distribution business, let's say you're sourcing your electronics from other countries like China, then of course you have to allocate your expenses based on what marketing channels you're looking at, and if you're going online versus offline. So I would say that it's a little generic question, but at the same time one needs to look at all these factors, and also the fact that there is a lot of funding available these days for electronics businesses.
Okay, let's take a very quick break at this point. On the other side, though, we'll continue answering all of those queries. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. Welcome back. You're with us here on Leaders of Tomorrow, ET Now special initiative for the MSME space. I have a Facebook query coming in from Pawan Singer. He says currently there is no mechanism to ensure that MSMEs are paid for services provided for goods supplied. As far as large corporates are concerned, they protect themselves because of the niche that has been created by the sheer size, and they can of course demand advance payments or letters of credit, and wants to know as to what is being done or what can be done to address this problem in a manner that's constructive and yields results. And we were kind of talking about this before in terms of how the MSME really protects themselves against the large corporates.
CRISIL did a study recently to look at what kind of receivable cycles are there. I think they looked at the range was somewhere about 60 days to more than 90 days. Given that as a big issue for these MSMEs, I think one of the solutions available is that financing against receivables and factoring. I think these are the solutions which typically work well, especially the financing against receivables has been now quite proactively used, especially organizations like SIDBI. There are quite a few banks who actually now give you this kind of financing. So I see this as the main important solution. I don't see much other solution other than the fact that if your service is very important to the customer, then of course they would try and help you out there. But I don't know if you think of any alternatives.
You see, the government is aware of this situation, and they have said that this Delayed Payment Act, they will make a provision for small scale industries that if their payments are coming overdue, that they can charge a penal rate of return. Plus today large companies, if it is 45 days overdue, they have to publish it in their balance sheet. Now the issue is this, it all very well in theory, but in practice if any SME actually takes the large company to court, he will get no more orders from them.
Okay, let's take a call at this point. Aditya Makharia is calling in with his query. Aditya?
Yeah, hi, this is Aditya from Maxon. We are into car rentals, and as you're aware that timely payments are very important for the service industry. So is there any organization or rule that governs the big corporate houses to make the payments on time?
We were just talking about this, but this is, almost flipping it around to say, can there be any regulatory mechanism to ensure that MSMEs are paid on time?
I think, one can look at actually, changing the business model itself to, get paid in advance. I think that's a separate thing. But from a regulatory perspective, I don't know if there's any regulatory mechanism which is available right now. But I think this is one of the issues which MSME as a collective body has represented it several times, and I think people have tried to find a solution to this. I don't think there is a solution yet.
All right, let's then take an email coming in from Anil Tandon. He says they manufacture zippers. Clearly, they are in the fashion and garment business. They say they have plants in India, Bangladesh, and Vietnam, and sales offices in New Delhi, Bengaluru, Dhaka, as well as abroad. Now, he says the main problem that they face is talent acquisition, especially at senior levels in the manufacturing and operations space. How do traditional companies like manufacturing companies attract and retain the right talent is his question, which is again a query that we face with the likes of, say, Flipkart and Amazon going all out to hire people. How do manufacturing companies, for example, hire?
I think one of the ways to solve the problem is to go closer to the talent, because the talent available for especially these industries are very abundantly available in certain geographies. In fact, Bangladesh is exporter to the world as far as garments are concerned. I think there's a lot of talent available there. But even in Bangladesh, there are specific regions where there's more talent available as compared to other regions. So one is that, and this is more at the middle level kind of, or even the labor class level. Now at the senior levels, this problem is no different from other MSME talent acquisition problem. And I think there it can be addressed by again creating an incentive model where the senior management sees value in future. So that's why it comes back to ESOPs. Can you structure ESOPs in such a way that the senior management sees value in future of the business? So I think senior management talent problem can be addressed like that.
Let's take another query. This is from Prashant Pansari. He's written in to us on our Facebook page. He says, in the IT segment, we continue to see Western markets and Silicon Valley really dominating the entire, whether it's private equity or venture capital space. He wants to know what some of the specific government schemes are for MSMEs as well as product startups, and also how easy or feasible it is to obtain such grants both for IP as well as R&D. And this is not a question that we get often in terms of IP and R&D, particularly in the MSME space.
So, it's very interesting, and honestly, I have been very encouraged by the recent action that the government and the departments of the government are taking, especially Department of Science and Technology, Department of Biotechnology, which is actually very encouraging to see. On the IP side, in fact, I was part of a recent, like a 3-day program where we were looking at innovators across India, and was very impressed to see the kind of innovations which actually came. Now, one thing which is the government has done in the recent startup action plan is created a single window for processing the IP. And I think one of the biggest issues was, how do you really go around in the system? Where do you do the filings? And it's interesting, people don't even know that if you actually go through the process and get your IP granted, you can get up to 15 lakh rupees from the government as a grant. So some of these things are very interesting and are encouraging for the startups from an innovation perspective.
All right, let's take an email query at this point coming in from Rajiv Gupta. He says they've not got any good response as far as marketing efforts which have been undertaken in the past is concerned. How do we change that is his query. He also says, while the government is promoting Skill India, how do they go about skill development training? So while he's not very specific in terms of what really they've done in the past, Skill India is something that a lot of MSMEs ask us in terms of how they can really participate in that.
It's a big challenge in India, especially to skill people at that level. And of course, there is a ministry and a department which actually looks at skilling India. There's a lot of benefits which are now being given to provide skills at the grassroots level. I think the private entities need to work very closely with the government, some of the government initiatives. The biggest challenge I see there is lack of information. One needs to really go and find out what are those new schemes, because quite a few schemes have been launched recently which actually provide grants and also support mechanism for skilling. So I think it's a matter of just working with the right entities, whether it is the government or the educational institutions or some of the other like ITI kind of institutions which are actually also building some interesting models of collaboration. So it's a matter of just going at the right places.
I would just like to add, there's a National Institute of the Government of Micro and Small Industry Enterprises based out of Hyderabad. There are also numerous institutions that the government has in terms of even small industries, which have a lot of schemes. And one has to visit the micro and small industry ministry site, because you have under various industry heads, there are a lot of these training and skilling programs, which are important, I think, that they must familiarize themselves with.
Time for one last query. This is a Facebook query coming in from Parth Makija. He wants to know, how do brilliant minds build culture? That's a bit of an open-ended question, I must admit. But that said, how do you ensure that you create a culture in the company which is carried forward through generations?
So I can give purely from my own perspective and how I have built IVCAV Ventures over time, right? So started just with a single person, and then it's grown into a good organization. And I think one thing which I've realized is, to build culture is, of course, it has to go through, orientation of, systems and processes. Unless you actually create a discipline in the company, it becomes very difficult to build a culture in the organization. For example, every day at 8:30 in the morning, we have a entire organization-wide call where everybody participates in that, right? Everybody shares their own respective work they're doing, their knowledge, transparency in the system, and also helping each other in terms of, if somebody gets stuck somewhere, then somebody else will come and help them out. So a lot of this actually is driven by the value system that you actually work around with, and I think a lot depends on the leadership of the company and how the leadership wants to build the organization. So culture is all about systems, processes, discipline, transparency, and knowledge sharing, as is how we see it. And I think it's once that happens, people automatically, that's how you can scale up the business and grow like that.
Okay, what do you want to add to that?
I think one thing is very important, is that you build a team which survives, and that is the legacy that you give to the company. I think it's very important for the leader in this, in particular cases, there should not be a case where he takes all the power and all the ESOPs and has a huge salary and the others do not have, because that's what we find. So the other people in the company really cannot identify, cannot see a future for themselves. So I think it's very important, if you really wish to build a team, you try to make it as egalitarian as possible, because once you have a concentration of power and a concentration of remuneration, it is just going to be a one-man outfit, which is normally the bane in a lot of executive management companies as well as a lot of promoter companies.
All right, gentlemen. Vikram, Mittal, thank you so much for joining us this evening, running us through all of those queries and expert takes. That's our edition of Leaders of Tomorrow. Do write in to us if you want to get our experts to answer your queries. The email ID is leadersoftomorrow@timesgroup.com. You can reach us on social media using the hashtag LOT, or call us on the number which is on your screens. Thanks so much for watching.